Well, if there's ever a topic that's appropriate and timely, it's one our guest today is expert in, and that is the whole subject of AI. She's in particular concerned about responsible AI. And I would suggest, Noelle Russell, that as we think about AI and all the ways that it's impacting us in our everyday lives, in our business lives, in every way imaginable, that you almost have a slash after AI and say robotics because it seems to be energizing everything we think we know about robotics, but it just seems like it's coming faster and faster. How are you today, Noel?
I'm doing great, and I could not agree with you more.
Now,
Great way
I
to-
know you're the founder and chief AI officer at the AI Leadership Institute, and which was the creator of the I Heart AI, I Love AI community. And your mission is to help businesses scale AI responsibly and ethically, and be the leading authority on how we do that. How do you come to this role that you're playing that's so important to all of us? How did you? What's your career path been like?
Oh, absolutely. It's kind of a fun story. I was, actually, I suppose it probably started a long time ago. The first time the world was going to
Of
end,
course I do.
Y2K. Do you remember these days? Where we thought, yeah. so, so that's how I got into technology. Got very excited about what we could do. Spent many nights, in financial services buildings, making sure that everything would come up sunny and bright the day after the year 2000. I was a principal cloud architect.
Who knew there were cloud architects in
Yeah, in
1999?
1999. Well, technically it wasn't cloud. It was, yeah, yeah, so I don't know if you remember VMware virtualization. It was yeah, so I've been in very interesting roles. So my journey kind of started back then when we were thinking about we were writing playbooks and doing what is called disaster recovery. Most of us don't even remember these days, but we literally had to fake disasters, bring down our entire organization and then build it back up just to see if it was possible. And that's what Y2K did, right? Is that it allowed us to do this. And so I presume, yeah, I was like, man, that was like a long time ago.
Going back 26 years ago, the idea was that computers hadn't been designed. You if, correct me here, but computers hadn't been designed to flip from 1999. No one knew what would happen when all of a sudden a clock said it's 2000, and no one knew for sure. And great disasters were predicted. Would gas pumps stop working? Would ATMs not work? Would everything? And it came and went.
Yeah, people thought that like loan balances would get reset, like the entire credit system would crumble, all because we had only planned for two digits, right? Everyone was like 89, 79, 76. These were the ways we characterized the whole year. And we were like, well, what happens when it's now 2000? Will the world think we're in 1900 or will it think we're in 2000? And so, yeah, it was a bit terrifying. It's a kind of a nice way to enter into the world because I actually think that energy is very
Mm.
similar to what I see right now happening in the world of AI. This kind of like massive level of angst, but also like, well, what is going to happen with this? Like, what will happen? And in that case, we did realize that over preparation served us very, very well. The world didn't crumble. Like the financial system stayed intact. And I think, yeah.
And you have the experience and the track record to have that as an appropriate caution. Now, you're a speaker, you're a consultant, you're a leader of the AI, founder of the AI Leadership Institute. You're in demand all the time. Write, speak, teach. What's a mix of your activities today?
Oh, goodness. Yeah. So, in any given week, I, of course, do like speaking. It's kind of my lead generation tool. It's how I get people to go, oh, I have a problem. But most of my time is spent actually building, we call it execution as a service. So, I help companies actually build these models. But I use a term that maybe is new to the audience, minimum as opposed to MVP. In the age of AI, anything can be viable. Like you can build a minimum viable product like half asleep. What you want to do in the world of AI is actually build for remarkableness. And this is how I got into AI specifically, I was an architect at Amazon, and Jeff Bezos ended up sending out an email, a call to arms to build the first talking computer. If you remember Amazon Alexa, this was like, 11 years ago. But in this call, he was like, we need to build a new user interface, a new way for people to execute any task. And he believed that voice would be everywhere, that we would use our voice to call everything, super complex workflows, launching, new bank accounts,
I
creating
believed it,
healthcare
and I'm not
services, like
sure why
everything would be
it
voice enabled.
hasn't happened yet.
Me too. I agree with you, Jim. Date, yes, I'm the same. I'm like, and I have a son with Down syndrome, and that's really what kind of promoted me into this space. Is that I was like, if I could build a system you could talk to, the only skill I need to teach my son is how to communicate with his voice. If he could talk, he could do anything. But the challenge now is that that's not what the world ended up building. Like they have not taken advantage of the technology that's available to build solutions that are voice first or even text first. We're only now 10 years later happening to start to build these solutions just now.
Yeah, and it's 10 years later than I thought it would be. But it's interesting because we just heard this week, in the past week, Jensen Wang say that the only programming language you'll need to know 2 years from now is English. In other words, you'll be able to just tell the system what you want it
Yeah,
to do. You won't know. You don't need to know how to write Python anymore.
that's right. That's right. And I think we're called, the term the industry is moving towards, I actually personally love, is called vibe coding. That you just need to, but here's the very specific critical point in this is that you have to have clarity of thought. You do actually have to know what you want and how to ask for it. And I'm sure you would agree, right? Over the last 10 years, we've actually moved further and further away from being really clear, good, strong communicators of what we want. Like we've moved to emojis and shorthand, and like we're not really good at this.
And who knew how important it was to know how to properly prompt?
Right. And properly prompting literally is like, what do you want? How clearly do you understand what you want in a way that you can explain it to a machine to do it for you? And I do think that that's what leadership is becoming, right? An AI leader is going to be not someone who leads
Hmm.
humans. It's someone who knows
Okay, that
how to
scares the
lead
heck
these
out of me.
machines. I know.
So,
Hope you sleep good
what was
tonight.
your
Okay.
path to becoming the guru of the cloud in 1999? Where did you grow up, and how did you grow up? I hope you're not done, by the way. Growing up, that is. Sure. Are you a pilot?
Yeah, I actually grew up in yeah, no, no. Just, yeah. Let's just say I'm not, for everyone listening and watching. But I actually was born in New York City. My family, as many New Yorkers did, moved to Florida. I went to Embry-Riddle. I don't know if you are familiar with that school. Yeah, so I have an I was a pilot, but then it was pre Y2K, right? So 96, 97, they're like, hey, we need people in computer science. So I moved into avionics. And then as a junior, IBM was hiring like mad people to move into, at the time, a brand new language called Java. And so I didn't finish college. I jumped, as many people did, right before Y2K. It's kind of like now we're like, if you know data, if you're a data engineer, I don't care what school you went to, just come work for me. Like it's a desperate skill. And that's what it was back then, is this enterprise Java skill. Pre Y2K was like, I mean, it wasn't even enterprise Java then. It was just like, we need people who understand this new way of thinking, which was object oriented back then. Anyway, so that's how I got involved. I ended up getting hired by IBM right out of school. Never finished my degree. Never really needed it. I always say I went to the University of Barnes and Noble. That's where I graduated. And I took books off the shelves. I taught myself TCP/IP. I taught myself Smalltalk. I taught myself COBOL. So that's how I got kind of into the world of technology. But I also learned in that moment that I didn't need to be classically trained. What the world really needed was builders, like doers, not talkers. Like they needed people who could show them a portfolio of work that they had done, not people who could just pontificate about it.
So, your first job out of school was with IBM. Did you stay there in Florida, or did you have to move for that job?
No, I moved to Raleigh, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
So where RTP, for those of you who know the area. But yeah, I was in RTP during that time. And WebSphere, IBM WebSphere was a big enterprise. It is a big enterprise platform in many of these companies. And I became an expert in that. And I was there 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, rode the wave.
And then what came next?
I went to VMware. So from there, actually, I should say that this is an interesting, ironic turn of events. Um, After my time at IBM, Red Hat actually recruited me to become their first ever female
So you're
enterprise
saying
architect.
IBM bought Red Hat just to get you back?
Yeah, exactly right. I couldn't believe it because when Red Hat poached me, they're like, "We are the Luke Skywalker, they are the Darth Vader," right? Like so, it was very ironic when those two when they became family as it happens, right? So I did end up boomeranging back to IBM later in my career once those two had combined. But how funny is that? So I spent 3 years at Red Hat, really learning about productized open source, which now today serves me really well because we are also productizing open source AI, and there is a method to that madness. But after VMware spun off a company called Pivotal. I don't know if you anyone remembers those days, but it eventually became they IPO'd and became a big company. I was there to help them launch that company. I'm always there at the beginning of these crazy ideas. And yeah, not an accident. Exactly. It's kind of my vibe. And so the second thing, right after that, AWS came to me and said, "Hey, we're launching cloud. Seriously, we want to go in and help customers. We're building a training and certification program for companies and consultancies." And so I was brought in to help lead that team. But I was only there about a year before Alexa was born, and I jumped at the opportunity to become part of that team.
At Harry and David, we work with our hands as well as our hearts, so you can enjoy sharing it as much as we enjoy making it. And that's what life's really all about, sharing with those we're closest to, no matter how far we are apart. Harry and David, share more. I've had the chance to get to meet and know Igor Joblikov, who is one of the fathers of Alexa. And I think Alexa is named after his sister, and she must hate him. Hmm. So today you get to advise companies all over the place on how they should be thinking about AI. And I would share with you that my frustration is not being a technologist, but having the chance to hang around with a lot of smart technologists. I just don't know where 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 to spend time. I'm trying to develop my own skills and proficiencies. Uh, I think the disruption is enormous. I think everyone says, "Oh, this is overhyped." I think they just don't get it. I can't articulate how it's going. It's underhyped, but I certainly feel like it is. And something that I've been looking at, I was chatting with one of our board members here at Flowers. His name is Larry Zarin, a longtime friend, good board member, great board member. And we've been chatting over the last couple of weeks about what we're seeing is he would describe as a flashing amber lights on our dashboard. And it's around the subject of employment, something you know a lot about and write about and speak about all the time. And the flashing amber lights that we see, Noelle, are in the last 3 weeks, an article in the Wall Street Journal talked about how all of the Fortune 500 companies are talking about a leaner workforce going forward, all of them. A third of them have reduced their workforces in the last 5 years by an average of 5%. 20% of them have reduced their workforce by about 5% and can see that trend continuing. Anecdotally, I visited in April my friend Jeff Sonnenfeld, who's the Associate Dean of the Yale School of Management. He has me come up there once a year to speak with his class with a few other active execs who are terrific and people I really look forward to spending time with. And we usually have lunch with about 18 or 20 of his TAs before the couple of hundred people in the class that we spend the afternoon with. And last year, where are you going after they're all graduating? Where are you going? McKinsey, BCG, everyone had a job. This year, same group, this April, go around the room, what are you doing afterwards? About a quarter of them had job offers. Uh, and then there's a young lady who's on my staff here. Her name is Michaela, and I met her last year when I was up there. She was the president of the class, and we were lucky enough to be able to hire her. She started with us in September, so she came back with me on the trip up to New Haven this year. And I told Professor Sonnenfeld, Dean Sonnenfeld, that I wanted my money back. I wanted to return her. It wasn't, of course, it wasn't at all true. She's terrific. But she's told me since then, not only were only a quarter of them talking about the jobs they already had, but she's told me just in the last few days that a few of her friends have had job offers either pushed back, start dates, or in some cases rescinded. So then we hear from a futurist who I have a lot of time for, who has a great podcast, and he has a book and a company called Abundance. Uh, and he's talking about white collar jobs being cut in half by the year 2030, only 5 years from now. And then we saw also in the journal an article about entry level jobs evaporating. So we have all these flashing amber lights. And then I read just today a story in the journal, I think again, about, no, maybe it wasn't the journal, about education. And the author's concern about we're teaching our students the wrong subjects, the wrong things to prepare them for this new world, that they're coming out ill equipped. So you put that all in a blender, Noel. Your niece, your nephew, your friend, your friend's children. Are we studying the right things in college? Are we preparing ourselves for the right things? What happens in this disruption that's at our doorstep?
Yeah, it's interesting, and also in my family we call it nerve sighted. It's this combination of excitement and nervousness, and you definitely have addressed a lot of the the amber lights that are on the nervousness side. But I do think, and we're starting to see this also, it's a bit of a chemicalization, right, that happens in these moments. The weird thing about the moment we're in now is that we don't usually see this in the span of our own single career life cycle. Like typically this would be a chemicalization that I would experience at the beginning or end of my career, but I would never see it come full circle in the time that I'm working. And now we are seeing exactly this, but it requires a bit of a reinvention, which is what we're starting to see at exactly some of the companies that you've mentioned, right? Is that companies like BCG, McKinsey, these big, the big four, they are having to reinvent what their previous goals of how many people do we have working in these companies, they call it a run rate, right? That dynamics, that business model doesn't work in a world where your main asset is human resources, especially when the human resource work you're doing is not on the highest scale of human productivity. It ends up being like on the lowest scale. Like, who can you get to, what humans do you need to do this work?
Well, 2 years ago, data scientists were writing their own checks, and today, no one's hiring them because
Right, right. That's right, because it's commoditized. 100. I used to say actually that even if you were a data scientist, like there is so much data today in the world that there's not enough data scientists to even process that data. But processing the data isn't actually the problem, right? The problem is that companies don't know what to do with the data that they have, and that is a business problem, a business awareness problem. It's why Jensen said what he said, is that the future is going to be who understands the problem enough to actually create a solution with a machine. Can a machine help you? Now, I will give you some hope, a little bit. I am a hope dealer. That's kind of what I do. But one of the things that we are seeing, yeah, is that at the same time as organizations are kind of becoming leaner, and realistically, I've been at Amazon, Microsoft, IBM, like there is some bloat in these organizations anyway. It frustrated the heck out of me that there were people in roles that weren't doing anything. Like I was like, so I actually think it's not a terrible thing to see this leanness happen, but I also think it's important to correlate that to small business growth and medium-sized business growth. People who are in the 25 to 150 million range. How many companies in the past, it was very hard for a company to go from 25 million in revenue annually to 150 or 250. It's extremely rare, less than 5% of companies ever reach that mark. But that is no longer the truth. So I think our span of success actually does expand, which means that everything we were taught about work for a named brand, get the stamp on your certificate.
That's really interesting because uh, we've always, what I've preached to my kids, to my now to my grandkids, is that we're all brand managers. You know, P&G is legendary for producing great brand managers, but we're each brand managers and we're managing our own brand. So in your life's journey, your brand wasn't the college you graduated for. It became the 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 patina of IBM was now your inured to your personal brand, and then Amazon, then Microsoft. So, but now it seems like there's even more importance on. Let me open that up and let me see what your skill sets are. Okay, I know you've been those places, but what skills did you develop along there? How did you engineer your portfolio? And it seems to be even more of a responsibility for individuals to be their own brand manager.
Yes, I always tell people like you are a professional services company of one. Like that is your job, right? Yeah, and it's exactly what you're saying. Like brand management is part of that, but you are like when you become an employee or if you decide to start a company or become part of a small company, like you are a professional services organization. So think about like what that means. That means you have to sell yourself. So
Oh,
every
yes, you
every
are.
engineer I talk to is like, I'm not a seller. I'm like, oh, you sell me every time you talk to me, right? So maybe work on that. And then you're a solution architect, right? You deliver with excellence. It requires you to really take this well-rounded approach to who you are going to be when you show up. And if you do that and you show up for work, you are going. Oh, the other thing I say is, as a professional services organization, like you yourself, you LLC, attach yourself to revenue. Like whatever you do in the world, that's the difference. Being a computer scientist is a cog in a machine. Being a computer scientist that generates lead generation models, you are now attached to the revenue cycle of a company. Don't attach yourself to cost because cost can be cut.
It reminds me of a friend of mine who's famous for telling young men, marry a balance sheet, not a P&L. He said, when I got married, I was very proud of my wife's very high income. And then she stopped working. And I love that. There's so many things you're saying. I'm stealing all these lines here. But ULLC, attach yourself to revenue. Don't be embarrassed about being a seller. Being a solutions architect. Just so much good advice in there. But let's get practical about it. Someone's lucky enough to sit next to you in seat 2D. You're in 2C on Delta Airlines, flying from Miami to New York, and
I'm like, it's as if you know me, Jim.
and he asks you, "Geez, I'm an accountant. I don't do much on the client side. I'm more ivory tower kind of guy, but I'm afraid with what's going on in AI, Noel, that accounting is going to be a very different place a year or two or three from now. What should I be doing to prepare myself?"
The first thing I tell him is the world right now. You can be a builder. It's very much like what Jensen is trying to tell everyone. But for 10 years, I'm like, you can now use your voice to build something. So that's the first skill I encourage. I actually had a conversation sitting in a similar seat next to a couple. They were on aisles, which is a thing apparently. Like I've been married to my husband. We're high school sweethearts, but we don't sit in separate aisles yet. And she's in her 70s and she's like, what do I need to know about this? Like, how do I use this? Me too. And so she was like, what do I need to learn? And I told her the most important skill you can gain is to actually learn to build a system, like build a system end to end. And you could do it with your words and you could do it with no code. Like, you don't, to your point, our point earlier, go in and use a system like, Microsoft Copilot or chatbot builder.ai or Replit. These are no code environments where you just,
Grok 4.
yeah, exactly, where you're just dropping boxes on a screen. But I think it's even easier than that. It's actually going into like Chat GPT and customizing the instructions so that it knows who you are and what you care about. What are your goals? What are your OKRs, right? What are your key results you're looking for? What are the metrics you're going to measure your own success by? And then ask it to help you solve a problem. Now, what we do, we don't, like my family, we're all ChatGPT users. We have a family account that I monitor very specifically. But we've taught our family, and I do this for my teams as well, to be a producer, not a consumer. That your job is, yeah, sure, you can consume cool AI content. You can ask it questions, be entertained by answers, but become a producer, be someone who creates an AI system that generates results that you've asked for. Do not let it build the blank page. You start with the page and let it help you evolve your ideas and thinking, help it grow what you're thinking, as opposed to, which is research that just came out, right? This GPT atrophy that we're seeing, that if you let AI, I always say AI is not this big AI in the sky that's going to come and take from you. You're going to give it. And if you're not intentional about what you're designing AI to do in your career, in your personal life, it will the perception will be that it's taking things from you. But the reality is just you weren't really intentional about what it should do in the first place. And I think that intentionality is really going to change. So yeah, when I sit next to them, I'm literally like, let's build a GPT together right now. We pulled out our phones. I've done it multiple times. And then I usually carry my book with me and I hand them my book. I'm like, we're friends now. Let me know how it goes. But become a builder. Like that's, we've kind of perceived in our own minds, I think, that we're not technical or we're not builders. But today in the world of AI you can talk to, everyone's a builder. So now it's about how good are your ideas and how many of them can you start playing around with.
GPT atrophy?
Yes. There's a long-standing research, but recent research said that if you start using Chat GPT or any GPT model, large language model, to get you off the blank page, that these natural synaptic activity that would happen in your brain stops happening, right? Because you're not the one creating, you're kind of consuming what's been created for you in these models. But years ago, maybe 7 years ago, Meta, back then they were Facebook, released research around predictive text. And they identified a very concerning statistic that if you get, we've all seen predictive text like in Gmail and on our iPhones where it's like, say brilliant or whatever, and we click it sometimes. What they found out is that over 6 months, people who use predictive text, when they took predictive text away, they did not go back to their original way of responding. They actually continued to respond in patterns presented to them by the AI over that 6-month period. Yeah. I mean, that's ultimately like we use responsible, but really it is just having it set an intention. That alone will force you to be more responsible in your approach. I actually have this really cute analogy that I use. You see these baby tigers around me. When I was at Microsoft, my job was to like manage a bunch of small models. And I used to say I was herding cats. I'm sure you've probably either used that term or been a cat that had to be herded, Jim. But I would,
That would only be a few times so far
right,
today.
right. But I realized with AI models, it's not cats at all. They're more like tigers. They're like cute and fluffy, and everyone loves them when they first start using them. But it's around, I call it day two of AI. When you get to day two of AI, which means after everyone's like enamored by this system, no one's really asked the hard questions like, wow, like look at your paws. How big are you going to be? Or razor sharp teeth. What do you eat? How much do you eat? Where are you going to live? And probably the most important question, what happens when I don't want you anymore? Like, am I going to sell the data I've collected on the open internet? That's happening right now. Like, we have to start asking these questions, but it all starts with an intention, right? An intention to say, I see you, cute baby tiger, but I'm going to be the one who's responsible enough to ask questions, even in amidst all of this enamored love for the AI we're using. Who's going to be the one that asks the hard questions? And I think it's us.
From gratitude to comfort, new beginnings to birthdays, celebrate life's moments with something special. Find the perfect gift at Harry and David. We make it easy to be thoughtful. I quote a friend of mine all the time. He's also a board member. His name is Shelley Palmer, and he's so smart about all things AI. A lot of things, but in particular, all about AI in the last years. But I quote him all the time when people say, I was at dinner on Sunday night. I sat next to us, either side of me, two very nice ladies. And one lady was saying to me, geez, I really don't know how to start to learn to use artificial intelligence. And I said, well, I'm going to quote Shelley Palmer. And he said, the most wonderful thing is it comes without a manual. And all you have to do is ask it, how do I learn how to use you? And when you hear that, you go, duh. Because in fact, you could sit down with a ChatGPT or a Copilot and say, I'm new to this. How do I learn how to use you? Tell me about prompting. Is there a key to proper prompting? How do I use you to do this? And it will tell you. And I will tell you firsthand experience. I had to do 2 reviews in the last several weeks. One of a terrific hotel we stayed at in Boston called Raffles. It's just a spectacular property. and the other was my wife and I were fortunate enough to, I just spoil her. Every 50 years, I take her on a trip. First one was a honeymoon. First one was a honeymoon 50 years ago, and the next one was just last month. We took a trip on a Ritz-Carlton yacht through the Greek Isles. I was asked to write a review of our experience, and so I'm a note taker, and so when I was at Raffles or I was on a Ritz-Carlton yacht, Ilma, I'm taking bullet point notes all the time. And then when I get back, I have all these notes, and it used to be a pretty laborious process to do that, but now I'll just feed that into an LLM, in this case, a ChatGPT or a Copilot. I think I used Copilot on the most recent one. And I just told, these are the things I observed. Help me to organize my thinking. Witty, and it helped me. It's just sped up the process of helping me to get organized and constructive. What things to use, what things weren't necessary. I told it what my overall impression was, what my intent was, what my concerns were, and it just helped me. It was like having a writing pal there with me who can say, well, let's do this first, or let's organize this over here. Okay, let's put that aside and come back to that later. I found it to be so helpful to get me over the blank page syndrome.
Yes. Yes. And but the critical part about that is that you actually gave it all the ingredients and you just asked it to like make the cake a little prettier, right? Make it taste a little bit better, but the ingredients were all there. And most though will say, "Hey, I just went on this yacht, write me a good review." And it'll just let the model, right, define what good looks like. So I think that is the key is that you took the time, and I'm a note taker too. I have an entire podcast called Noelle's Notebook of moleskin notebooks that line yeah but that line my office, and so similarly I'll take all these notes and then that allows me again to give direction to this model on what good looks like. And I think that is the key, is that the model doesn't know what good is, it doesn't know truth, it doesn't know humanity, it doesn't know fairness, it only knows what we tell it yet. Well, and but even then that is going to be based on its interpretation of the training data we gave it. Like even years from now, it's kind of like Alexa. If you have one in your house, statistically, women tend to yell at Alexa at a much higher rate than men. And yeah, and if there were women, if I'm sure there are women probably listening and or watching right now, and they will say, "Oh my gosh, yes." Uh, but the reason for that, of course, is because when we first started, we didn't use a lot of female data to train the model, and so it kind of was pre-framed with this male voice understanding, and most models are this way. But it's very hard to right that ship. It still isn't great. It still has this like deficit because it's baby tiger mode, right? It's as a baby tiger was trained, the male voice is easier to understand, and I think the same is true for fairness and justice. Like over time, because it started bad
So around your house, are you chatting with Alexa all the time?
all the time. We have over 100 voice enabled devices in our house. But I have also a son with Down syndrome and a dad I take care of. So
So 100 devices. And is this a cacophony of sound in your house? Everyone's talking at
yes,
the same time to Alexa?
all the time. So I even in my office right now, I probably have 10, and in now they're not all Alexas, right? I have, as you can see, a bunch of robots. There's actually more robots over there that respond to me. So they're voice enabled, Pomodoro timers that are voice enabled. But for my son, we have a executive function area of our house, which is kind of like a network operations center for our family. It's where all of the tasks and the chores are identified. It's gamified, but it's voice enabled because my son, who has Down syndrome, he's just frustrated.
You're opening so many windows for us here, Noel. But you're not just knowledgeable, you're smart too. And so you just drifted into robots there. And at the very beginning, we started out by saying, I read the article in the last 2 weeks about the number of devices, number of robots that Amazon has deployed now exceeds the number of humans. And I was chatting with someone recently who said that they visited a Amazon distribution center that had opened 5 years ago, and they had several thousand people working there, and now they have 10. And she said she opened the door to the main facility, and she was shocked by two things. One, it was no lights, and it was cold. But she said you could see these robots whizzing by, so you weren't allowed to go in because you get run over. But she said, and the other thing was, she was surprised at the algorithm of distribution within that center. Okay, the yellow Gatorade is here. Clearly, the blue Gatorade is right next to it. No, blue Gatorade's 5 aisles over, two. And there was a mathematical model for why that was the case. But look at the implications of that. Amazon bought that robotics company a long time ago just to keep that technology internal and to really step on the gas pedal on its development. Give us your insights into what the home is. Every home going to have a knock?
Yeah. I mean, it's available. It's kind of, this is the key with technology. I think the challenge with technology, and it actually goes back to a thread we pulled on earlier: solution architecture, go to market. Like, there is technology that can help families in sandwich generations like myself, where I have my dad living with me who, has his own challenges. I have a son with special needs. I have five other kids. Like, I need this, and the technology is not new. I'm in year 3 of having this, but that company is not good at getting its ideas to the market. They don't, like, the world doesn't know that they exist. And there are lots of them. So we go to CES every year, and I speak there every year, but I use it as an opportunity to, like, peruse, right? I peruse through all of the tech, and we have a voice enabled microwave that's also sensor enabled, so you can never burn food. And I'm like, why would you can never burn popcorn, you'll never explode a hot dog. Exactly. Be connected. 100%. And they can, right? The tech exists. It's cheaper now than it's ever been. So now it's a matter of, like, how do we get the world to adopt this? And ChatGPT did a favor for us, right? It enabled us all to believe that we actually can talk to a model, we can talk to a system, and it can give us good answers. Now we need to translate that to act. So in my home, I'll extend it a little bit, but we have all of these, like, voice enabled devices just to create a seamless experience for regardless of everyone's ability, right? Whether they're, high levels of cognitive function or low levels, like, everyone can operate. But the one thing we're starting to see are ambulatory robots, like these robots that roll around your house. Well, many of us have these little robot vacuum cleaners, right? We're starting to see those vacuum cleaners get arms to pick up socks, which almost always sabotage a robot vacuum cleaner's job. So it's awesome. They've now got sock detectors, which is fantastic. But the future is Astro at Amazon. They launched Astro, which is this cute little robot that's tied to your Ring camera at the front door, and it'll roll around. But again, I always think about minimum remarkable product. If I was, there, remarkable. Yes. Yes. So this is the extension of that, that when you launch something, it has to be remarkable. So people are like, oh my gosh, I need that. Astro was launched, and all it did was extend the capability of the Ring camera. Not super remarkable. I have it on my phone. Like, I didn't need it. But if they had put in pill dispensing, which there is the ability for that to do, I would have, like, snapped it up, told all my friends. Like, that is one of the things that I struggle with. Or any remarkable feature. It doesn't have to be mission critical. It just has to get me as the user to go, oh my God, that's pretty awesome. I'm going to do that just because it's cool. And that's how I think some of the best AI systems, ChatGPT started off as a playground, and now we're using it inside companies to write lead generation, supply chain management, compliance audit systems. But it started off as just a remarkable playground that made everyone go, well,
Hmm.
that's not
So that
terrible.
takes us back to the beginning. And what impact on the employment construct as we understand it today, Noel? Uh, I have a friend who counseled me over a year ago to say, he said, Jim, you were not born digitally native. No. Your kids were close, but not really. They became digital, right? Your grandkids, although, are going to be born and raised AI native. And here's the implications of that. And he went on to scare the living daylights out of me. Because, well, how many people do you have in finance? Oh, I guess we have about 150, 200 people in finance. He goes, your competitor, who's born AI native, that hasn't started yet, but will be a real threat 3 years from now, will not have more than one person in the finance function. And how many people in legal? Well, you don't need 25, 20 people in legal. They'll have one or none. And he went on and on and on. And they won't have an army of programmers, and they won't have. Be able to do everything you do with 5% of the people you have on your payroll. And that scared the daylights out of me. So our commitment here, Noel, is to our team, and we're year round FTE about 5,000 people. And our commitment here is we cannot promise you that you won't be disrupted. We're pretty sure that most of us are going to be disrupted in one way or another. But our commitment to you is as we learn these new technologies, it's our responsibility to bring those tools to you. Can't make the horse drink, but we're going to bring those tools to you. So we reinvigorated our fresh university educational system around here, and we're doing everything we can to make the tools available to people to learn AI skills. Because Shelley Palmer again, no, it was Seth Godin who said, if you're an employee at work and you're not trying to figure out how to automate through AI tools all the things that can be in your job functioning to leave you time to do the things that only a human can do, rest assured that your boss is thinking about that because he or she has to. And so it's like the rallying cry. What do we, and I ask my kids, I'm talking to my grandkids all the time, but what are they doing to sharpen their tools? And Shelley went on to say that it's been his experience that people who learn these skills, even if they are disrupted and they're out of a job, they feel like they have a superpower. And they're not nearly as concerned because they know they have very attractive skills. They can work for somebody else. They can hang out their own shingle. They can consult. They can build products. They can build systems that have value. And so he said they just don't fear disruption. They understand it's going to be a part of their life. So that's a long intro to a question is, tell us what you're seeing and on the disruption and how it's coming and how we're most likely to see it manifest itself.
These organizations that I get a chance to talk to, some of them are like the largest consultancies in the world where they're really trying to figure out, I mean, the best part of, leaders, the good ones, right? They are worried about like, hey, how is this going to impact the people that have trusted me with their employment? That they, a lot of these very strong leaders, especially big leaders like Satya Nadella, Sam Altman, like one of the I always like to be data driven in my approach to understanding problems, and one of the signals that I encourage leaders to go look at is in those big companies that are a bit further ahead than us: OpenAI, Anthropic, Salesforce, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, like Nvidia. Who are they hiring for now? What are those open roles? And if you go and look at those open roles, and then even more so, I'd love that we're now seeing a trend where people actually say how much they're paying people in the requisition itself. Who are they paying the highest amount of money to? And you will notice they are very human centric roles. And so these are, who knows the problem? Like, for example, I was looking at OpenAI the other day because they just opened a new consultancy. Well, it's not a new arm, but they've productized it. So they've made it available to not just their favorite clients, but anyone can now hire the consultancies at OpenAI. And if you look, the roles are like, who has 20 years of experience in finance that can now help us sell the dream of an AI augmentation, right? Who has 10 years of experience in healthcare? Who has run a contact center in, insurance? Like, they're looking for humans who have the domain expertise that can be complemented by AI. And this is across the board. And that leads to, yeah, it's actually not a terrible time to be a free agent in this space, because your expertise, especially if you're, a 10 plus year veteran in a specific domain or have a specific level of knowledge in supply chain, compliance, security, it's a really great opportunity to put out. I love this shingle. Yeah, that's like old school way of saying it. Yeah, Main Street USA. Yeah. So yeah, I love it. Yes. So that it is a great time. And I do think that there are people who have not been paying much attention to this space that ended up in a position where they have been laid off from a role, where the
Also, what about the inverse of that, Noel? Aren't you looking to see Microsoft announced that they'd be pruning 20,000
yeah, they're
people
16,000
in the
in
past month?
already.
And what roles are they? What roles are they
That's
eliminating?
right. And I would, so the analysis that I've seen, and this is across, there's several job reports. So Stanford, for those of you who are research people, Stanford HAI has released a jobs report. McKinsey also did this as well. So you can see this impact, that there are certain types of roles. Typically, those roles are very, I always call it cog in a machine roles, roles that I try to avoid like the plague. Right. So like, and I think this is why you had mentioned earlier, Jim, this concept of like all these entry level roles are being removed. I'm not so sure about our future with that, but this is the truth that they're seeing less value in that analyst role when they can just use a model to do that analysis. And not only can they use a model, that model will be better at that job. My town,
And producing all the decks that
yes,
analysts produce.
PowerPoint creation, asset creation, right?
Mm.
All of that can now be, and we can create iterative evolutions of like you create a single deck today. We take that deck, we snapshot it, we stick it in SharePoint forever. In the future, they say you'll never need that deck again because what you're saying today has evolved. And we are now taking that same idea and evolving it. And then a model will maintain the memories of everything we've done. Yes. I mean, I'm a bit ambitious, so I'm all about the double major. That I was myself. So I think, in my success has been a combination, and I call it AI solutions architecture. It's actually now one of the fastest growing roles in the United States. But it's this concept of understanding the tech deep enough to build remarkable products, right? To build remarkableness. But it's also knowing
Or at the very
business.
least, minimum remarkable
Yes,
product.
exactly. At least get the person you're selling it to go, okay, let's do that. Let's start there. But you can no longer show up with a PowerPoint deck and go, I promise in 3 years this will show up for you. Like those days are over. Today, you're going to show up and you're going to actually need to do that demo on the fly in the room, listening to what your customers are saying. So that skill set is typically how do I understand enough about business value, business growth and scale, as well as deep technical knowledge. So, computer science, that's not a dead field. You're going to need to understand how to engineer a solution. Systems thinking is a critical skill, but it is only as critical as combined with do you understand a business? I also encourage younger like students that are just coming out of school to pick a domain, right? It doesn't matter which one. It could be art, music, whatever, healthcare, finance. Some people are, born and bred and they love accounting. I don't know why, but they are born that way. And so pick that domain, but complement it with the systems thinking, complement it with information systems and understanding. This, I think, is a critical part of, that combination of skills makes you a unicorn today, but it'll make you survivable in the future, right? As more and more people and systems are developed to evolve us. Yes,
So
I couldn't have said it better myself.
so much. I'm running out of notepad, and look how facile I am with technology. I have a certain
Yeah.
pen I use. I have a certain pad I
Yay.
use, and then I scan it. Once in a while I do it direct to my laptop, but not often enough. You've I'm a paper guy. Anyway, you've been terrific. I've taken so many notes from you. You're such a treasure to be able to chat with, and I can't wait to tie my grandchildren in a chair and make them watch your conversation over and over again because they'll learn so much from it. Noelle, there's going to be a lot of people in our audience who I want to get in touch with her. I want her to come to speak to our company. I want to get a copy of a book. Where do they go to contact you to find out more about you?
Absolutely. The best thing to do is just to head over to good old LinkedIn and become my friend. Connect with me there.
Noelle, Noelle, Russell,
That's right.
Russell.
Yep. Or you could just go to noel.ai. It's a website. It'll tell you all the things that I am. It's very easy to find.
We have so much more to talk about. I can't wait to us getting scheduled again. I'd like to drill down on and more on your family and particularly your son, what's going on in his world. Uh,
Yes.
you've been so good with your time. Thanks so much for sharing your ideas, your wisdom, and most especially your energy and enthusiasm.
Thank you, Jim. It was my honor. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Noelle. Noelle Russell. Wow, what a talent.